Joining me now is the Executive Vice President for Planned Parenthood, Don Laguens. Don, great to see you today. We heard about the security cameras inside there. I want to ask you, do all of the clinics have these advanced security precautions, cameras inside, safe rooms, bulletproof glass?
The health and safety of every patient and staff member at Planned Parenthoods across the country are our highest priority. So each and every location, of course, has a security plan. The staff is well trained and based on a various number of circumstances would determine what kinds of things they have, but these would be typical.
The fact that law enforcement have told CBS News that the suspect, Robert Deere, said no more baby parts when he was arrested, how do you interpret that? How do you process that kind of information?
Well, I think from the very beginning, of course, we've been concerned that the climate, some of the hateful rhetoric of the last few months might be contributing to an additional amount of threats and violence. Thankfully, of course, in our 700 health centers across the country, most of our millions of patients will never see a protester, never encounter violence. But when it does happen, you have to look at the climate and wonder how that contributes.
You've taken it a step further. You called it offensive and outrageous that some politicians now claim that the tragedy has nothing to do with the toxic environment they helped create. One of those people who has been very outspoken is Carly Fiorina, and in excruciating detail, she's specific about her repugnance for Planned Parenthood after the attacks. Here's what she had to say.
This is so typical of the left to immediately begin demonizing a messenger because they don't agree with the message. The vast majority of Americans agree. What Planned Parenthood is doing is wrong, and that's why the vast majority of Americans are prepared not only to defund Planned Parenthood, but also to stop abortion for any reason at all after 5 months. So what I would say to anyone who tries to link this terrible tragedy to anyone who opposes abortion or opposes the sale of body parts is this is typical left-wing tactics.
And what would you say?
Is that a typical response that you would expect from someone who's running to be president?
It doesn't surprise me, given that on numerous occasions, even after Carly Fiorina's claims have been shown to be untrue, especially the one that people don't support Planned Parenthood. Everyone's seen the polls that the vast majority of people in this country support Planned Parenthood. 1 in 5 American women have been to Planned Parenthood. That Carly Fiorina would be, I suppose, tripling down at this point on her criticisms. But of course, it's exactly, I would quote one of her presidential campaign colleagues, Ben Carson, today, who said, we have to end the hateful rhetoric. He was referring both to the abortion topic and to the Middle East. And of course, the hateful rhetoric only really happens on one side.
And in fact, we've heard very strong condemnation of the attack from one of the Republican political candidates, Mike Huckabee. I want to play what he had to say.
Regardless of why he did it, what he did is domestic terrorism, and what he did is absolutely abominable, especially to those of us in the pro-life movement, because there's nothing about any of us that would condone or in any way look the other way at something like this. We ought to value life. Every life truly does have worth and value. And this is an incredible tragedy. And I don't know of anybody who will say anything other than just outright condemnation for this horrible, horrible, despicable act of murder.
Would you like to see Mike Huckabee's view of this become the way this is categorized as domestic terrorism as opposed to crime?
Well, I actually would more agree with Loretta Lynch, our Attorney General, who said this was a crime against women seeking health care. That's what's clear. I'll let somebody else define whether it's terrorism or not. And believe me, I hope that every single candidate will stand up and say that this was a despicable, horrible tragedy in the Colorado Springs community and for everyone. But I also have to point out that Mike Huckabee is a person who, in his campaign, has threatened to use troops to stop abortion. And perhaps this person thought they were one of those troops.
There have been 42 bombings, 186 arsons, 8 deaths, 17 attempted murders since 1977, according to the National Abortion Federation. What can you say to assure the women who use Planned Parenthood for their health service that when they come in for treatment that they're safe?
Yes, the abortion community has certainly faced over many, many years a lot of different threats. As I said earlier, Planned Parenthood is across this country, 700 health centers. Almost no one in the history of Planned Parenthood has ever encountered protesters or the violence that you describe. The day after this tragedy, Planned Parenthoods across America opened their doors. Their courageous and compassionate staff were there to serve women, and they were there again today, and they will be there again tomorrow. And again, the health and safety of our patients and our staff are our top priority. And I'm just, again, so proud of what our staff did and the way that they've been praised by law enforcement, that great planning, that great training made this tragedy way less than it could have been.
Dawn Laguens, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Contessa.